When we say the word wealth, we're not just talking about money, we're also talking about time, and we're talking about the influence in the lives of the people you care about the most. Wealthy people, those who have a lot of money, time, and influence, didn't get there by taking the same path as everyone else. They thought differently. They made bold, unusual moves, and that's why they've accomplished what so few people accomplish. The goal of this podcast is to train you in the mindsets and the specific tactics of the wealthy so that you're fit and capable of producing wealth yourself. We want to help you get WealthFit. Let's go. Welcome back. As you know, it's my job to get inside the heads of successful investors and entrepreneurs and find out the mindset and the specific actions they took to create that success. And today, we are doing something a little different. We are talking to a dual board certified emergency medicine physician working in one of the top 12 busiest level 1 trauma centers in the country today. Her name is Dr. Jaime Hope, and you are going to fall in love with her just like I did. She has an amazing personality, which kind of throws you for a loop because you think someone actually needs to be a little hard to succeed, a little cold in that world to succeed. And yet she is unlike what you're thinking. And I am very excited to introduce you to her in just a second. So in the show, we talk about bringing people back from the dead, the 4 pillars to good health, and actually how you can change your habits. And I know that sounds crazy, but change your habits in just 5 minutes a day. So if you want to lose some extra weight, you want to start that business that you've always wanted to, or whatever it is that's been on your list, we talk about how you can build better habits and how you can do it in a short time frame. This show is incredibly fascinating. You will walk away with a smile from this. And I want to give you a little more background. So Dr. Jaime Hope, yes, Dr. Hope, very interesting. Dr. Jaime Hope, as I mentioned, she works in the ER. And also, too, she also provides healthcare in rural areas. And in the show, we talk about that, the difference between being in a big hospital versus being in something that's a little smaller or a lot smaller, and how to deal with that and cope with that. In addition, she is an assistant professor at Oakland University, William Beaumont School of Medicine, and she does workshops on behavior change, motivational interviewing, and she's on the faculty at the Lifestyle Medicine Interest Group. She does a lot. And she is on a mission to help people improve their habits, their health, their resilience, their confidence, and their lives. And so in today's show, you're going to get a smorgasbord. Yes, that's the word, a smorgasbord of practical advice that you can use to change your habits, to improve your health, and how to manage stress. So if that sounds fascinating to you, then let's get to it.
Hi, this is Dr. Jaime Hope, author of Habit That and dual board certified emergency medicine physician. And you are listening to the Get WealthFit show on the WealthFit podcast network.
Dr. Jaime, you're an emergency medicine physician at one of the top 12 busiest level 1 trauma centers in the country. I can't imagine the things that you've seen. I'm very curious right off the bat to ask you, how do you manage the stress of that situation? I mean, number one, is it stressful?
Oh, yeah, Dustin, it's a very stressful job. So we're a huge level 1 trauma center. We get referrals from all over. So we need to be ready at any moment to handle absolutely anything that walks in the door. And we don't always get a lot of warning. And if we have a couple of sick patients, that certainly doesn't deter additional sick patients from coming in. So there's really no limit to how many can come through our doors. So you have to be ready for anything.
How do you manage that stress, that unknowingness of like, you could have 30 patients at once and like, now you got to roll. How do you manage that?
So that was really important skills I learned. Emergency medicine has a very high physician burnout rate. For that reason, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of things going on. And I decided very early in my career, you either need to develop ninja level rock star coping skills or find a different job, because it's a very difficult, very noisy, very chaotic environment. So I always start with just the basics. When I'm going into shift, I make sure I've had good self-care. I make sure I've had a good night's sleep. I make sure I've gotten a healthy meal. I pack and bring healthy food with me because sometimes it's so busy, I don't have an opportunity to go get something. So I've kind of got, snacks squirreled away and a healthy meal with me. I make sure I take bathroom breaks when I can. And I kind of reframed my job in a way that I felt very connected to what I was doing. I was finding the meaning in the work and connecting to my patients. And I have found in most situations, the stress it's really not that bad. I've come to the very zen place with it. The nurses love running a code with me because I'm very calm. So for me, I've trained myself over the years, the crazier things get, I just go into calm mode.
Wow. I mean, I have to ask, what sets you off? What volume? Like you said, that the opposite occurs, the more that comes at you, the calmer you get. So what does set you off? Is there anything?
There is. Actually, I have a very, very long fuse, and that's pretty well known. I'm generally very happy, very bubbly in this environment. But what drives me crazy is if people are doing things that negatively impact patient care. They're not doing their job the way that they're supposed to be, or reporting that this bed is empty because there's 60 people in the waiting room that are waiting for that bed and stuff like that. So it's that kind of stuff when we're not putting the purpose of the job and the patient first. I have to say, I've gotten a little irritated in those situations before.
Do the other doctors think you're some sort of anomaly, or do they come to that place of zen like you? What are they thinking?
There are a lot of my coworkers and colleagues across the country who are very zen. There are some people who kind of get a little ramped up with it. But there's so many practice settings across the country. Not everybody chooses that kind of practice setting. And even among my colleagues, I'm known as being particularly happy. And so, yeah, they think I'm a little bit strange in that way, but I certainly think being too happy is not a problem.
What I find fascinating is, so you're in this crazy environment and yet you moonlight and you actually volunteer or you work at a rural hospital. And so obviously in a big hospital, top 12 busiest in the country, tons of resources, you've got a team there. In a rural setting, if I have this correctly, I got to imagine obviously less resources and not as big a team, which puts you front and center as the one, right? You really, I guess, have more control in that scenario. Is that right?
Sometimes I feel a little bit less control, at least at the big hospital where I work at. There are resources. You can kind of snap your fingers and make a resident of any specialty appear, which is nice. And if somebody comes in, I've done things, crack open somebody's chest, massage their heart, sew it up, bring them back from the dead. It's a pretty cool phenomenon. But I'm in a room full of well-trained people. So we've got this. So when I'm at a rural critical access hospital, what critical access means is that it's being supported federally because they don't have enough people or resources to keep a hospital open. But you don't want to have people so far that they just don't have any way to get medical care. So physicians from my area, from Detroit, drive up to this part of rural Michigan to help. But it's a 3-bed ER, which is substantially different from the hundreds of beds that we have. And so it's a different kind of stress because the team there isn't as trained in critical care. So if somebody comes in with a truly devastating injury or incredibly sick, the vast majority of the work is going to fall on only me, and I have nobody to call for backup.
You're awesome. Obviously, I love your personality. I think the WealthFit Nation's going to love it too. But the line I just wrote down is you bring people back from the dead, and that's a pretty cool thing. So kudos to you for saying that and just having that happy detachment, I guess, in a way. How do you think you've arrived at where you are? Have you always been so happy about the scenario, or did things stress you out back in the day? How's your journey been to this point?
Oh, it's like any journey, even the entrepreneurial journey, the wealth journey. I would love to say that I've been sparklingly awesome the whole time, but I'm so confident that that would be a ginormous lie. So I've had plenty of bumps and bruises along the way. When you're studying in medical school and in residency, you kind of get that holy crap moment. They put on the coat and you get your stethoscope and you're like, yay, you're an MD. This is awesome. I even made my big brother call me doctor all day that day I graduated just to be an annoying little sister. which we never outgrow. But no, it was terrifying. If you remember the show Scrubs, where there was a code once on the first day and some of the doctors ran toward the code and some of them ran to hide in the supply closet, that's a very normal feeling. So there have been times where I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, that I wasn't working hard enough. It's a very macho environment. It's go, 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 push yourself, work even if you're tired, work even if you have an IV. And I wondered, is this right for me? And I had some mentors tell me, you're too happy, you're too sweet. Why don't you go into pediatrics like a normal person with that kind of personality? But I knew that this was the place for me. I love emergency medicine. And so I had to learn the hard way. Sometimes I needed to make the mistake more than once about not taking good enough care of myself and not feeling connected to my specialty enough. And you get burnout, and some days you just want to quit.
I'm hesitant to go here, but I feel like I owe it to the folks listening in. And the reason why I'm hesitant is like you're incredibly bubbly and this is amazing. And I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but I do want to ask you, because entrepreneurs, we cope with losses. We cope with, turn in the marketplace, investors that listen to the show that deal with it. And so obviously, if someone passes under your watch, how do you manage that? I mean, obviously you can't be happy. I would imagine that bedside manner would be bad there in that situation. But like, how do you cope with that yourself? How do you put on the understanding face to the family? How do you deal with that?
And that's a good question. Of course, certain situations you can be laughing and joking with patients, but in a lot of situations in the emergency department, that's completely inappropriate. So it's because I'm very deeply connected to my empathy that I can put on that face. I can understand how they feel. I'm telling them bad news, and it needs to be delivered in a very important, very respectful way. You need to speak in a language that somebody can understand and be present with them, sit down, answer questions. Because it certainly, I always like to joke that one of my superpowers is bringing people back from the dead, but we can't save everybody. And it's hard. It can be awful. And I've seen some horrifically tragic, unbelievable things. It's very hard for people who aren't in that to imagine. And so I have, in certain situations, let myself shed some tears with the family. I'm still coming from a position so they know that the whole team worked hard and we did everything we could. But it's okay to feel those feelings. And then my mistake I was making early in my career was I was going home and I was internalizing it. And I was taking on their pain and taking on the weight of the loss instead of learning how to let that go through me. Because I've treated a lot of entrepreneurs as patients. I created a talk that I've given at a couple of entrepreneurial conferences called Resilience Through the Fire Without Getting Burned, because the journey is very similar. Like you said, with the market's up, the market's down. One day, everything is great. You're hugging your patient. They go home. You fixed them. Then the next day they crash and burn. And no matter what you do, you can't save them. And so to feel those type of things, to be able to weather that kind of storm, to be strong enough, it makes a huge, huge difference. Because just like a lot of people don't necessarily want to work in emergency medicine, not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. It can be a scary journey. You know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure I got it. So what I hear you saying, Dr. Jaime, is that you have empathy in that moment. You allow yourself to feel it, or that's just natural to you. However, when you go home or when the time is appropriate, you detach. Because obviously the antithesis to what we just said here is like, you're just so detached, like people look at you and like you're cold, right? That would be the opposite. But what I hear you saying and sort of your advice is, in the moment, just be present, show your empathy, understand the severity of the situation, but then you've got to detach at some point. Is that the message I'm hearing?
Yes and no. So I don't completely detach, but I work through it and process it. So I've developed a very healthy support system. So I have my tribe, I have my family, I have my friends, and I have another group of physicians I can talk to. So you can call somebody or message them after work and say, oh, I had a talk and die patient. And they immediately know what you're talking about. And you can work through it and talk it out, cry it out, and then help dissipate that thing. And a lot of people detach. I've never been able to fully do that, but I'm able to now process and dissipate it so I don't carry all that, because I still need to show up the next day for work and the next day.
I want to go back to the rural hospitals and I want to ask you why. It's easy to sit in essentially like your castle, right? You've got all these resources, you can snap the fingers and you've got like such power here. Why do you feel the need to go into this environment where it's a little trickier or really different?
For me, the choice was all about personal growth. I wanted to go into an environment that kind of scared the hell out of me. It's so different than what I'm doing. And they say the sweet spot of practicing medicine is about 10 years out because you are very fresh and very willing to bring in new knowledge and new technologies, but you also have the experience and the gestalt to back up what you're doing. And so I'm at that spot. I've been practicing for 13 years, including residency. And I was like, I'm not going to just sit here in the sweet spot. I'm going to grow. So I've been teased about this a few times. I'm like, okay, what's the hardest thing I could do? Okay, here we go. And it's honestly been wonderful and very rewarding.
How would you say it's different in your opinion? So working there in a resource-rich environment versus now maybe improvisational, how do you see them as different?
The pace is different, everything about it. On the big center, it's constant. There's never a break. We actually, our 10-hour shifts, we don't get a break. And there's not usually a period where work stops. But at this, we're working in 24 to 48 continuous hours. But there are times when there are no patients there. So dealing with downtime and then knowing how the teams are very different. The people at the rural access hospital live in that community, the nurses and the techs live there. So they're very integrated. They can teach me a lot about medicine. They all know each other. If somebody comes in, they know everything about them, which is so fascinating to me because I live in suburban Detroit. I live right outside of Detroit. So that certainly doesn't occur necessarily here. And so I learned good lessons about task switching and even culture switching, that I can bring my skills and expertise, but it's very important for me to integrate myself into their culture and not the other way around.
I'm sort of fascinated by this idea of you having downtime. And I don't know if you want to be on record for saying this, but like, can you like have downtime? Like, can you go on your phone or are there other like tasks that keep you busy in the rural hospital? Or do you read a magazine? Like, what do you do?
Honestly, it was so weird to me at first because I'm constantly charting or doing stuff at the other place. No, I've had times where my charting is done. I'll even go try and find other paperwork to do. I mean, if there's nothing to do, I wrote a few chapters of my book while I was there. Because I was like, well, I'm awake. I'm ready for the next patient that walks in the door, but like, I'm feeling inspired. Let's sit down and write about resilience because I'm sitting here in this environment. So it's been a lot of fun.
I definitely want to get into the book. I got one more question before we get into that. Why medicine?
Ooh, I love that question. I always knew that I was made to help people. And I loved being a teacher, but I also love the idea of being a doctor. Now, I'm first generation college, so I didn't come from a long line of medical people by any means. So when I first told my family as a teenager, hey, I want to go to medical school, they very lovingly asked me, are you crazy? Do you know how many years of school that is? And the student loan debt, they certainly didn't have the financial resources or wealth by any means to help support me through that. But I knew it was right. I loved helping people. When I was, I believe, 10 years old, I was jumping on a trampoline with my BFF. And somehow we double jumped with the other kid on the trampoline, and she got bounced off the trampoline and onto the ground. Now, keep in mind, this is in the 90s, so there's no safety net. There's no padding. We're just jumping on this trampoline. And she dislocated her elbow. And it was very obvious that her arm was no longer pointed in the direction it was supposed to be pointing in. And even at 10. And I remember looking at her, and instead of being horrified, because one of the other kids ran to get help, I was like, I want to learn how to fix it. I wanted to pop it back in because I knew it would hurt less if it was where it was supposed to be. I just really wanted to. Of course, she wouldn't let me, which is understandable. Who really wants a 10-year-old to try and reduce your fracture? But it always felt right. Every science class I took, I was so fascinated by, and I just kept wanting to learn more and more. And what I realized that one of the best parts of medicine is that I get to be a teacher. I get to teach my patients every day. And so I really was able to integrate my biggest professional goals together. And then even now I'm a clinical professor and then an assistant professor at the medical school. And so I'm teaching at the bedside and in the classroom. It's pretty amazing how it all worked out.
Doubts along the way?
Absolutely. Being first generation college can be a little scary. I had an amazing application And they say a lot of people don't get into medical school their first try. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 tries. And I got in on my first try on the very first day. I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And in school, you're used to being the top student. But when you get to med school, everyone is the top student. And so all of a sudden, like, wow, am I qualified to be here? I actually had an incident with some bullying in medical school where somebody was bullying me because I was first generation college, which I thought was very ridiculous. I was like, we're adults. Is this really still happening? And then you get some negative messages along the way. I had a very old male attending suggest to me that women don't belong in medicine and we're just here to meet husbands. And I tried to explain to him, if I had spent the amount of money and time I had invested in school and just invested it in, I don't know, getting my hair and nails done, I probably could have gotten a husband years ago. I was like, but I'm a hard worker, so bring it on.
Hey, I want to take a quick break and then we'll get right back to the show. I've never done this before, but I just want to take a quick time out and say thank you for listening to the show. It's the love from listeners like you that keeps us pumped to continue improving the show and the caliber of guests that we beam directly into your eardrums each week. So I want to give you a little thank you gift right now. Go to wealthfit.com/thanks and you'll find a free online video course from WealthFit founder Andy Proper called Wealth Building 101, How to Get Out of Debt, Boost Your Active Income, and Start Investing for Passive Income. It's one of the most inspiring, life-changing trainings I've ever heard, and it's designed to help you get unstuck financially and well on your way to real, lasting wealth for yourself and your family. So go to wealthfit.com/thanks right now. That's wealthfit.com/thanks. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for subscribing to the show. You have my commitment to bring you truly life-changing guests and education on each and every episode. And if there's anything I can do for you, please reach out. Now back to the show.
I'm going to be the best person on this rotation and then some.
I'm extremely fascinated by your journey. I owe it to you to get into the book. So let's get into the WealthFit Nation. And so you've got a new book out. But before we actually really dive in, I don't understand because you have an amazing attitude, but I'm sure you have some incredible stress levels, even though you manage them incredibly well. What's the why behind the book? You're busy, you're successful, you could easily coast, although I can tell that's not your style, but why did you decide to write the book?
So you, like an entrepreneur, have that hunger. And what I found was a lot of patients in the emergency department are there on the worst day of their life. And I found it so frustrating that a lot of the things that led to them being on the table in front of me, they could have prevented it at many points along the way. So I started getting education in nutrition, exercise, sleep medicine, stress management. You wouldn't believe, I'll nerd out on anything. I mean, I'll go on some mitochondrial physiology right now, but for the sake of the audience, I promise I won't. But I just really enjoyed learning it. And so in my role in the emergency department, I don't have a ton of time to do that with patients. There are many times I'm having a conversation with somebody about their kidney stone and we've got it under control. Middle of the conversation, they call overhead. We've got somebody coding and I have to get up and walk out, literally walk out of someone's room to go to the crashing person. And so I had this little dissatisfaction inside me that I could be doing more. And I was doing talks at community service locations, just locally, senior citizens' homes, local service groups, and things like that. And they wanted to ask me questions about how to prevent being in the emergency department. And I'd always enjoyed teaching and speaking. And so I started to grow in that. And I said, you know what? I would love to be a professional speaker. I love teaching people the strategies that I've learned so nobody ends up burnt out on a bathroom floor like I was at one point, and to grow. And I've had some really amazing opportunities. I was at the Gazelle's Growth Summit run by Vern Harnish. He's the author of Scaling Up and Rockefeller Habits, Greatest Business Decisions of All Time. I don't know if you know him. Great guy. Mm-hmm. And so we were chatting and I said, I want to grow as a speaker. And he said, oh, you need to write a book. I was like, well, that's interesting. I've always thought about writing a book. I was like, I don't see why I can't. And so I started just pouring all of my knowledge about healthy habits and stuff, because that's what I teach at the medical school. I teach the behavior change course for future physicians. And so why can't I can put this in a book for lay people so they can help prevent having to ever see me in the emergency department? And then from there, everything just kind of grew and snowballed. And it's been so amazing.
I love that you're coming at it with prevention. That's something that I've been reading more and more about. You make the claim or the implied promise that you can build better habits in just 5 minutes a day. Please do tell on how we can actually create change in our life, but actually create better habits just to make it ingrained in what we do.
Yeah, I think so many of the health guru books and stuff like that, they're asking too much at once. Okay, so I think some of the health gurus today are asking too much at once. And it works for some people. Like my sister, I love her. If she decides that she's going to go to the gym, she's going to go full bore and be a competitive powerlifter. There's just no middle ground, which is awesome. And I love that. But for a lot of people, that is so intimidating. They don't even start. And so we're kind of going against our nature. We like to live in our comfort zone. And so what I want people to recognize is you have habits all the time. I mean, think about it. When you put your pants on, you put the same leg in first every time. But no, picture you holding your toothbrush in your hand. Which side do you start brushing your teeth on? It's the same side every time, isn't it? So just these little habits and things that we do. So you can't go against human nature. Our brain wants repetition. And I came up with the phrase habit that because one day after lunch, there were some peanut M&Ms sitting out. So I had some peanut M&Ms and the next day they were still sitting out and I had a few more. Fast forward a few more days, the peanut M&Ms are gone and I finish lunch and immediately my brain says, time for peanut M&Ms. I was like, oh my God, I just created a peanut M&Ms habit after lunch that quickly without even realizing it. And so when I look at something, looking at the peanut M&Ms, do I want to habit that? So anytime I start a behavior or a thing, do I want to habit that? Now, at the recent holidays, I ate too much cheese and junk food, of course. Is that going to be a permanent habit? No, because I recognize that this was a special occasion. This was a conscious choice I was making and not something I'm going to incorporate into my everyday life. So kind of tricking our brain and using what we already know, just building some of the healthy habits into the day you already have rather than disrupting your whole life. It's the reason why people get a gym membership and a few weeks later, they're still paying it and they stop going. They never integrated it into their life and into their habit cycle. So it's just all about making it a routine part of your day. You don't even have to think about it. You don't think about brushing your teeth. You just do it at the end of the day because that's what you've been practicing. So with just 5 minutes a day, start with one habit at a time and just start integrating it. And it becomes a part of your day. And then you move on. It's that first domino. And then it starts getting easier and easier. People start at 5 minutes a day. They'll end up doing more. I know that. I know human nature, but I'm trying not to scare people.
I want to take a big one. So let's say my New Year's resolution is I'm going to lose some weight or I'm going to be healthier. However you frame it. And I know we could speak to languaging and frame it better, but essentially let's just take the big one, which is I want to lose some weight. I'm a little too many cookies. So that's such a big thing, right? To break that down, how would you advise somebody or coach them up? What advice would you give them to change the habit or do a 5-minute thing to now ingrain this into their everyday routine?
So the two levels that I would want to look at this is one, just the big, broad level of mindset. And I know, Dustin, that you talk a lot about mindset in terms of wealth and growing your wealth and things like that. And so you know exactly how important this is that I'm talking about. So for a lot of people who say they want to lose weight, I'd like to ask them, what is their mindset? Are they viewing themselves as a dieter? Are they viewing themselves as a yo-yo dieter? In their mind, are they viewing themselves as a fat person or somebody who's failed so many times, they're just going to try again? So no matter what habits I give you, if you're in that mindset, well, I'll just try that, don't expect it to necessarily work, nothing is going to be effective. So the first thing I do is kind of, as my friend Joe Polish says, do a little bit of a mental enema to clear some of the BS out of your brain. A good friend of mine always referred to himself as the fat kid. And he wasn't particularly overweight, but he eventually did get heavier. But everything he did or said in his mind, he's like, well, I'm the fat kid. This is what a fat kid does. Hey, do you want to go for a hike? Nope, I'm the fat kid. I was like, this is crazy. I can't believe you're labeling yourself and you're choosing this. Get rid of that ridiculous label and become, what do you want to be? So I encourage people to use the label. I don't like it to be about weight in particular. I want you to use the label, I'm a healthy person. Sometimes a healthy person eats brownies and you could still be a healthy person, but your big overall mindset at the top of the goals sheet before we start getting into number of minutes of exercise per day is that mindset and mantra, I am a healthy person. Because you can lose weight with any ridiculous BS, unhealthy crap diet. You could go on a bacon and donut diet for a week and lose weight if you're just eating less calories. But that's not the important thing. I'm trying to get people to be a healthy person, and eating nothing but bacon and donuts for a week is not going to accomplish that. So I'm looking, it's the whole tortoise and the hare. Everybody wants to lose weight super quickly and whatever. And then, of course, they gain it right back. I just want this to be a long-term, sustainable habit for you. And if you're focused on that being a healthy person mindset, the weight will follow because you're going to start acting in accordance with that. So you just pick one 5-minute goal at a time, whether it's, you said, for example, to lose weight. I don't like people to necessarily choose a number of pounds by a certain date, but what do you want to do to lose weight? And pick one specific goal at a time.
This is interesting to me because you operate in both worlds, and obviously you see a lot of things that come your way. And I would imagine a good percentage could have been prevented. Let's not talk about accidents, but like more health related stuff. I don't come off as judgmental, but do you sit there and think, gosh, if they had just had access to this information, life would be different, number one. And then two, as a follow-up to that, like, do you sit there and say, gosh, I really hope this person will change, because you'll fix them up and do what you got to do, but I really hope they will adopt the change, lasting change?
Yes, I do. Because some of it is access to information. I mean, there's so many things out there. You can Google anything and find the answer you're looking for. If you're looking for the answer for the bacon and donut diet, you can Google it and find it. Sometimes there's too much information, but what's actually useful, correct information. And at my heart, I'm a science nerd. And so I look at human nature and data and things like that. And know if you have the information on how to best use your human nature, because we're imperfect. I mean, come on. We like to say that we bought the car, the very fancy sports car, for the gas mileage, but we all know we bought it because we look hot in it. We know the truth. We're emotional beings. And so just using that. And so, yeah, I do. I want people to do it going forward. And so I've been teased a few times, but I'm a big fan of giving somebody an encouraging pep talk. I have found that shaming somebody or judging them does not incite behavior change. So I come from a mindset of empowering and say, this is where you can go next. Here are some ideas. And most importantly, connecting them with that mindset of being a healthy person and the why that's driving them. I mean, you asked me about my why. Why did I go into medicine? Why did I write a book? You know how important it is to be deeply connected with the why when you're doing something, and you're substantially more successful.
You've got 4 pillars to good health. However, I like to geek out in my own way, and I've seen it written somewhere that you're not this like health nut. You were a junk food junkie. So I'm curious, before you were now
Busted.
More conscious of what you put into your body, what sort of junk food were you into?
Oh, geez. So I may or may not have taken pride in the fact that I could eat an entire bag of Cheetos. And I'm not talking about the individual serving one.
Oh, the big bag.
Yeah, it's not great. But I was a very unsophisticated eater, and I still owe millions of apologies to my parents. I was the worst eater when I was a kid. The rare time we had enough money to go out to a restaurant or a buffet, they're like, please don't make us pay for her. All she's going to do is eat one piece of cornbread and then sit there and eat nothing the whole time. And I did. I remember I hated all vegetables, and canned green beans was a staple in our house because they're inexpensive. And my mom said, you can't get up from the table until you finish your green beans. And I stared down those green beans for hours because I was not the loud tantrum kid, but I was quietly like civil disobedience. Like, no, I hate vegetables. So yeah, I think if I had maybe 5 servings of vegetables in my whole childhood, I'd be shocked. And as I was getting older and really embracing being a science nerd and learning about how the body works and kind of having this moment, if I am going to be a doctor and tell patients how to get healthier, who am I to sit here wiping Cheeto dust off my white coat? That's not going to happen. So I said, okay, if I'm going to expect people to make changes, I'll go first and see how hard it is. And some of the changes were very easy and some of them were not easy.
I love Cheetah dust. It's such a great visual. It's like you have so many quotables in this interview. It's amazing. Cheetah dust. I want to get into the 4 pillars, but I want to flip the question now and ask you, like, what's your favorite healthy food, your healthy snack that you enjoy now?
Oh, geez. My favorite healthy snack. I love so many things. I'm kind of interested in trying new stuff. But if I'm just sitting in the car, I'll go old school. I'll have some just cut up broccoli and carrots and celery and just munch on that while I'm driving. And it's fun and satisfying. So yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
No sauce, just straight up raw.
Yes.
Wow.
I know, like a savage.
You are a savage. I love it. Talk to us about the 4 pillars to good health.
Yes. So usually if you're talking about health and weight loss, people's mind immediately goes to diet and exercise. But what they're forgetting are a more well-rounded view of your body, which also includes a stress relief and self-care and sleep. So I've named the 4 pillars: eat, sleep, burn, release. So burn is exercise and release is stress. So Dustin, I've had patients come to me and say, I am doing everything right. I am eating vegetables. I'm eating lean proteins. I'm eating healthy fat. I'm exercising and I cannot lose weight. What the heck is wrong with me? It's probably some disease, right? Like, it would be super great if we could just blame something and get a pill. But just out of curiosity, how's your stress? And I can tell because they're white knuckled and their shoulders are up to their earlobes. I'm pretty tense right now. Well, the way the body works is it's exquisitely designed to keep you alive. Your body doesn't care what your butt looks like in your favorite yoga pants. It's trying to keep you alive. So it activates the stress response, which includes your fight or flight response. So that's your adrenaline type hormones. And then long-term stress activates your cortisol. So when your cortisol is activated, it's sending your body the message to hold on to every calorie you put in to buffer you against stress. And so even when you're doing everything right, your body's just doing what you tell it to help it survive. So until you learn how to release some of that stress and bring your cortisol level down, get out of that fight or flight mode, even if you do everything right, you can't lose weight. And then if you don't sleep, you're losing out on your body's ability to make adequate amounts of growth hormone. And then the lack of sleep further stimulates your stress response. So if you're ignoring the other ones, it's at your peril.
Now, I know the classic line is you can't give medical advice, especially to somebody that is pitching you a hypothetical, because everybody is different. Timer for you, but I don't know if you have to do it as well. What is a range of sleep that people should be thinking about? Is 6 enough? Is 10 too much? What's that sweet spot?
Generally, around 8 really is the sweet spot. I know a lot of people say that they can do just fine on 4 to 6 hours. And I say, well, you're not going to burst into flames. You're not going to drop dead, but you're not living well. You're not living optimal. You're not giving your body the time it needs. So just like you can survive on bacon and donuts, it doesn't mean it's a good thing. And so people don't realize how much that lack of sleep, even a couple of hours each night, substantially decreases your cognitive function. They've had people do fine motor tasks, complex calculations, things like that, even slightly sleep deprived, and they're performing less. So I ask you and ask your audience, you guys are making big decisions. You're making decisions about your wealth and businesses. Am I going to get into this investment and not? Do you want to make these decisions impaired? That just seems crazy to me, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs burn the candle at both ends. And I'm like, I don't care how big your biceps are. You haven't slept in 3 days. You need to get rest because you are operating at a very high level and you need to maximize your cognitive function. So you really need to work on hitting at least 8 hours of what I call sleep opportunity.
Define that. What's sleep opportunity?
So, that thing where you've laid down too late and you're looking at the clock. If I fall asleep now, I'll get 5 hours of sleep. If I fall asleep now, I'll get 3 hours of sleep. So 8 hours of sleep opportunity doesn't mean you're in bed on your phone or watching Netflix or eating Cheetos. It means that you are in a cool, dark, quiet environment without electronics, and that you don't have to leave that environment and be woken up to move to the next day for 8 hours. Now, some of us have trouble falling asleep. And so I have some techniques for that in the book too. I am a very fast-paced ER doc. I come home from a shift. That's not it. You can't just flip a switch. I can't just go from 60 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour in 3 seconds. It's like the opposite of a car ad. But making sure you give yourself that sleep opportunity with that correct environment. And then within that, then we work on the habits that help you actually fall asleep easy and stay asleep.
You speak on resilience. You mentioned it earlier, and being an entrepreneur or being an investor, you got to be resilient, right? You got to manage your stress.
Oh, yes.
You got to get up from the falls and all sorts of things. What are your keys? What do you share with folks to help them become more resilient?
So I kind of have my Resilience RX strategy. So I'll share a few of those with you. And so one of them, as you can obviously tell from what I'm talking about, I term it self-care isn't selfish. You can't fix the world with broken hands. You can't be running at a high level that you're expecting of yourself if you're not taking care of yourself. You are a fine automobile. You need to give it tune-ups. You need to give it oil. Don't overheat. So really teach that the self-care isn't selfish and make sure people are getting all four of the pillars. One of the other things that I found, particularly with entrepreneurs that resonated, was I tell people, you are not alone. You are not the only one who has felt like they don't know what they're doing. You're not the only one who has entered into a business deal and got screwed or lied to. And you're not the only one that's poured your heart and soul into a launch or a product or a book or something and just saw it flop. You're not the only one who's been told that they're crazy. Why don't you just get a real job with a steady paycheck? And you're not the only one who hasn't been told, like, you can't do this or why are you doing this? But even just backing up to the entrepreneur as a human being and not just as an entrepreneur, you're not the only one who has been bullied or mistreated at some point in your life. You're not the only one who has struggled with some kind of trauma, illness, fear, sickness in the family, death of a loved one. You're not the only one. And when we isolate ourselves and don't talk about it, we are too embarrassed to talk about a failure, a mistake, or anything like that. So we sit there alone in that thing and we get more and more disconnected. And that's how there's burnout, there's addiction, there's alcoholism, there's stress, and all those things. One of the best things I can advise anyone to do is connect. The entrepreneurial journey can be a little bit lonely versus some other jobs. Find your people, find your tribe. So I know this is a really long answer, but this is one of my things. So I want people to identify 5 groups of people in their life. And this is really important. So number 1 would be the people that you're inspired by, the people that you learn from and listen to. You listen to on podcasts, you read their books, you learn from them. The second one would be what I call a fail friend. And I learned that term from one of my coworkers, somebody that you can talk to when things get crazy or when you screwed something up or when you're embarrassed or frustrated. You don't necessarily have to tell the whole world, but you need someone you can talk to. Number 3 is identify people in your life that would die for you. Not people you would die for, but people that would die for you. And that's a barometer for, are you showing up in the relationships in your life? Are you there for those people on a meaningful level? And it's a really good way to help check yourself. Number 4 is finding your tribe. So I have my tribe of entrepreneurs and authors and speakers. And I have my tribe of doctors. And I have my family. And I have my kids and dogs and husband. Like all the different tribes of people you connect with. And then lastly, number 5 is the group that you're bringing up behind you. These are the people that look up to you, that think you're amazing and are inspired by you. And by connecting with them, it helps you stay connected to what you're doing on a really meaningful level. So I really like to drive home, you are not alone. It makes this journey so much easier.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Now, I know you're an avid reader.
Yes.
I am curious to know, like, what's impacted you as of late, recently?
So 2 books I've read recently, because I was like, I knew that question was coming. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've read about 50 books this year. So the first one is called Wealth Can't Wait by David Osborne. And I don't know if you know him at all. He's a real estate mogul. He's done a lot of things. He runs the GoBundance tribe. But he talks about, from this very healthy mindset about wealth, and in a lot of ways that I talk about health, he teaches about how to do wealth and really clearing out the junk in your mindset. And I realized I'd already done a mental enema about my health, but still kind of had some issues and weirdness around money. So as much as we all like to think that we're self-aware creatures, it took reading a book about that to make a huge difference. So I love that one. And then the other one is Willpower Doesn't Work by Ben Hardy. And he's a PhD candidate student. And his book just came out this year. And he, in the same way I do, has a really good understanding about human nature and human habits and stuff like that. And he suggests some specifics for trying to get out of relying on the fickle tides of motivation to do anything and really setting up the environment and the mechanism to accomplish it. And so his was focusing on finances and entrepreneurship and personal goals in addition to health. But I love the way that both of these books really help incorporate human nature and gave even bigger, broader perspective than what I had had. And so I really liked those.
Those are writer downers, WealthFit Nation. Definitely.
I highly recommend them.
Definitely give those a look. Dr. Jaime, I want to move us into WealthFit round, essentially rapid fire questions here. I am going to flip the script a little bit on these questions. I am curious to know, what is your least favorite piece of advice out there on health? What is the myth that irks you that people sort of blindly follow, or they just don't know any better? What's out there that just really shouldn't be?
Oh my gosh, if I could delete the whole fat will make you fat myth, that would make my life so much better. Eating fatty foods is not what makes you fat. Eating healthy fats. It's so interesting. We became kind of in the 80s and 90s this very fat phobic society. Everything, low fat yogurt, no fat yogurt, all of these different things. We removed fat, but what we added in were chemicals and sugar, and the obesity epidemic spiked. Additionally, if you don't have adequate fat in your diet, it decreases your brain function and your hormonal level. So for your male audience, that's going to decrease your testosterone level. For women, it's going to decrease your sex hormones. So eating things that have healthy fats in them is not bad for you.
Would the flip side be to reduce, like if you had to, and this is such a weird question to ask, but I'm feeling it for some reason. If you had to give like one, it's weird to say it, but.
Yes, absolutely. Reduce simple sugar. By all means, eat nuts, eat avocados, eat olive oil. I'm not advocating for a zero carb diet because I don't believe in any extremes, as you can probably tell. But yeah, simple sugars are not the way to go. You definitely want to have healthy fats in your diet.
Your guilty pleasure. So life is great. You're saving lives and money is flowing to you from speaking gigs and book sales. What is that guilty splurge that you like to treat yourself to?
Oh, for me, my kryptonite is brownies. Nice, warm, right out of the oven brownies. Because I don't believe in guilt with food. I think that's that whole guilt and shame thing that we've come up with. This food is good. This is bad. You should feel terrible. I hate all of that. So I enjoy a brownie. And so I found a recipe. I use Ghirardelli pre-made powder mix because who has time to make it from scratch? And instead of oil, I use a can of black beans. And you can't taste it in there. And it kind of makes them rich. Sometimes I like to kid myself. I realize it's still not a salad. It's still a brownie. But at least it helps the high sugar spikes. But I love that. I oftentimes will bring one to work. And then near the end of my shift, I'll go put it in the microwave for 35 seconds so it tastes like it's right out of the oven. And I call it my victory brownie because I did good on my shift. And I feel absolutely zero guilt about it.
I'm so wanting a brownie right now.
No, right?
Thank you, Dr. Jaime. What belief or new behavior that you've recently adopted, let's say like within the last 2 years, has made the biggest impact in your life? So what's something new that you've brought into your world that's made a profound impact?
So I learned the power of mantra and really drove home kind of your brain is your B word. I won't swear on the podcast, but how much control we have over our brain. So if you tell your body, the sky is falling, I'm freaking out, I'm stressed, your body will respond. But if you tell your body, I got this, it'll help use that energy more for performance enhancement than that detraction. So I became very, very conscious about what my internal monologue is saying to me and really taking control of that. So I have mantras with my kids. I have mantras at work. I have some on the way that I'm driving into work, what I'm using at work, what I'm doing home, and really taking absolute control of that inner monologue. And that's made all the difference in my life.
As of recent, like you have this amazing personality. It could be seen as like you're creative, you're very into experiences and sharing with others. And yet like there's only so much time in the world, right? It's finite. Like there is an abundance of time. I'm sort of conscious now with what you've shared with me. So let's just say there is a power in the ability to say no so that you can create what you want to create and have the life that you want to create. So I would like to know, what have you become better at saying no to as of recently?
Oh, I had to do that. I just assume if somebody's asking me to do something, whether it's speaking or being on a committee at work or doing something, oh, it's an honor, they must need my help, whatever. But every time I'm saying yes to something, I'm saying no to something else, whether that's my time to go to the gym that day or my time with the kids or time to prepare something that I need. So it took me years. That's probably the mistake that I've repeated the most in my career until very recently. Sometimes you need to make a mistake more than once to really drive the point home. Yeah, so I really did have to learn to say no. I was just asked to be on another committee at work, and it's all unpaid. And I love the world, and I would give away all my time if I could, except for it does not keep the electricity on in my house. So I have to have some boundaries for what I want to do. And so I just look at, okay, is this going to get me closer to my goals for wealth, for professional development, for community service, for being with my family? If the answer is yes to one of those, great. If not, I don't necessarily have time to fit something like that in my schedule.
Dr. Jaime, you are awesome to speak with. I could probably go another couple hours and just pick your brain, but I want to be mindful of your time. And I want folks to know how to contact you or get access to the book should they want to continue the conversation, follow you, and see what you're up to in the world. What's the best way for the WealthFit Nation to do that?
So the book, it's called Habit That. And so they can look under Dr. Jaime Hope. It'll be available on Amazon as of January 8th, 2019. And my website is Dr. Hope Health. I have found people love that. I've had so many people ask me if Dr. Hope is a fake name. It is actually my real name. So drhopehealth.com. And there's a contact form there, whether somebody wants coaching, they want me to come speak at an organization. I do some productivity training because not every company wants to have someone come in and talk just about habits, but I teach them. But if your employees have better habits, it'll increase their productivity. And all of a sudden the ears perk up. Oh, I see the value in that. So that's the best way to contact me. And then if there's anybody who is struggling with habits or wants to get more involved with the community, I have a private Facebook group called the Habit That Tribe. They're welcome to join. And it's a very safe, supportive community where somebody will say, I'm really struggling with eating healthy during the holidays, or I cannot seem to get my fitness in this week. And people will just share ideas and best strategies. It's not about me being a guru. It's about everybody sharing with each other.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for being on the show. I love your energy. I love what you're up to in the world. And I had a lot of fun on the show. I hope you had as much fun as we all did here. And just really appreciate your time, Dr. Jaime.
I did, Dustin. Thank you so much for having me. I love your mission. As I said, I was talking to you earlier. I love that in addition to helping support entrepreneurs grow their wealth and their business, that you actually care about the entrepreneur themselves and how important that is. So to see somebody, a role model like you bringing that message forth makes me so, so happy. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Absolutely. All right, WealthFit Nation, that's it. Can't wait to see you on the next show. So many quotables from this show. One I want to share with you, and I don't always share these with you because I don't think necessarily they're a big takeaway, but I just find they're funny. It was incredibly fun to do this interview with Dr. Jaime Hope. I am looking forward to meeting her someday, perhaps a course at WealthFit. Let us know on social if you think that's a great idea. And so I wrote this down. I just want to have a little fun with you. And it says, your body doesn't care what your butt looks like in yoga pants, as a quotable. And there, you should see my list. There are so many other quotables that she had from the show. I hope you had as much fun as I did. But in terms of takeaways, I thought a couple things. Number one, good self-care. So here she is in a crazy, incredible environment, and she knows that it's important to take care of herself. In fact, the thing that I wrote down is self-care. This is a quotable. Self-care isn't selfish, and you can't fix the world with broken hands. And so I know I can really resonate with this myself. Sometimes I just care and love to help others so much at my detriment, and that takes a toll. And so you've got to take care of yourself no matter the environment. And if you think about whatever it is that you're doing in the world, you've got to do this so that you can perform at your game. And it's only a matter of time before it catches up with you and you end up in an ER like myself, actually. And so from grinding and hustling. And so make sure to take good care of yourself. I also loved mantra. So telling yourself mantras, because your thoughts are things. And the more that you program your mind, the more that you tell yourself internally and even externally, saying it out loud is something that can help you achieve success. And so that mantra I thought was very fascinating. Other big takeaway, having 5 groups to surround yourself with. So just as a real quick recap, number 1, find a group of people that you are inspired by. Number 2, find a friend, a fail friend that you can explain or share the struggle or the things that you just can't share with others. Number 3, find the folks that will die for me and surround yourself with them. Number 4, find your tribe, the different associations or different groups that are like you. And so in her case, authors, doctors, speakers, go out and find and build those tribes around you. And then number 5, the group that you bring up. And so that's like paying it forward and giving it back. And so I found that fascinating, the 5 different groups to really surround yourself with. And when you have that, you almost have like your own mastermind and people that can help you function and understand different areas of your life and really help you there. And so many big takeaways in the show, the 4 pillars to good health. As a reminder, eat, sleep, burn, and release, with burn being exercise and release being releasing the stress and getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 hours. And so I also noticed I wrote down cheetah dust, which I called out in the show. And so big takeaways. This one, if you're very interested into health, and heck, if you just want to smile, save this one and come back to the show 100%, because it will put a smile on your face and it will make you say, gosh, if she can come at the world with the attitude that she has, being in a crazy environment, dealing with death, right? And actually bringing people back from the dead, gosh, how hard could it be for me? And so very motivational, very applicable. I really hope you enjoy the show. I'm curious, what did you get out of the show? What are your action items? What did you like most? And if you think it'd be a good idea to have Dr. Jaime create a course for us here at WealthFit, give me a yay or nay on the social. That's it for now, friends. Can't wait to have you on the next show. Thanks for listening to this episode of Get WealthFit. Did you have an aha moment or two during the episode? I want to know. Remember, life doesn't pay you for what you know. It pays you for what you do, for the actions you take and the moves you make. So take a second right now and go to getwealthfit.com. You'll find a printable recap of this episode, links to things we mentioned in the show, and some exercises that'll help you start taking action on the things you've learned. You can also get in touch with me, Dustin Matthews. That's getwealthfit.com. Go there now, and I can't wait to talk with you again on the next episode.